Peace, peace, family. Welcome to Dali's Universe of Ahimsa. And today I have a very, very special guest, the one and only Dr. Gary Francione. Welcome, Dr. Gary Francione.
Hi, thank you.
Dr. Gary Francione is a distinguished professor of law and philosophy at Rutgers University. He is the author of numerous books and articles on animal rights and the abolitionist approach.
Abolitionist.
Abolitionist approach. Many books he's written are called Animals, Property, and the Law, Reign Without Thunder, Animals as Persons, Eat Like You Care, just to mention a few. So today, I want to be talking a little bit about how Jainism, Hinduism, and veganism all relate. And this is my main mission in life. I want to be talking at temples and educating my own Indian people about the cruelty of dairy. And so I like to talk at temples and have the temples take the pledge. And the pledge says, we will no longer, to be a pure Ahimsa temple, we will no longer be carrying any dairy products at the temple. So I suggest that they use coconut milk when we're pouring more milk over God, or to lighting the diva, which is like a candle at the temples, to use coconut oil instead of ghee. When we're offering prasad to our God, which is an Indian sweet, we use a plant-based butter. So this is my main mission, and Dr. Francione knows all about Ahimsa. He's spoken at many Jaina conferences, so I wanted to discuss that today. So, Dr. Francione, can you tell us, why is it so difficult to get Jains and Hindus to make that one switch, being pure vegetarian to going vegan?
Well, I think culturally, dairy has been a big part of Indian culture.
Yes.
And I know more about Jainism than I do about Hinduism.
Okay.
But my understanding is that dairy has a quite close connection with Krishna, correct?
Yes, Lord Krishna. Yes,
And,
he was a cow herder.
Right.
Speak up.
And so I think that that there's that element. But remember something. Veganism is more than just what you eat. It's what you wear. And
everything we think.
And what we think.
And we do, and what we say. Yeah.
Exactly. But, I remember once being in a Jain temple, and there was a sign that when you went into the inner part of the temple, you were supposed to take off your any leather.
Yes.
Well, if it's bad to wear leather inside the temple, why is it okay to wear leather outside the temple?
Right.
So we shouldn't be wearing leather.
Right.
And ironically, India is a culture that reveres the cow.
Yes.
But yet, India's meat exports are through the roof, and
we're the number one beef export.
The number one beef export,
and second in leather,
and certainly up there with dairy.
Yes.
And so it's ironic and peculiar, and I think that many Indian people that I've met, when I discuss this with them, they say, well, they tell me some story about how when they were younger,
yes,
their grandmother had a cow.
Yeah.
This is the the problem of the grandmother's cow.
Yeah.
The grandmother had a cow, and the cow was a member of the family, and the cow used to hang around at night and eat dinner with the family. It was like member of the family.
Right.
And the answer is, well, even if that is true, it's not that those products aren't available to you now.
Right.
And I think that there's this tendency to think that, well, dairy, we have this fantasy that dairy, unlike meat, dairy could be produced without violence. And the answer is no, that's not true.
Right.
Because however you produce dairy, however supposedly humanely you produce dairy, it still necessarily involves keeping the cow impregnated constantly and then taking the baby away, which causes tremendous emotional suffering on the part of the mother and the baby.
Indians will say, "Oh, we're just taking the leftover."
But that is empirically false. As a matter of fact, a fellow whose name escapes me, Jain, did a study. He's an Indian Jain, and he lives in England now, but he spent quite a bit of time traveling around India, going to small little cooperatives, and showing how the cows are the calves are kept from drinking the mother's
Yeah,
milk because
yeah.
they have to. If the cow
Right.
drinks the milk, there will not be enough to sell.
That's right.
And so the males can't produce milk, so they become part of the veal industry.
Right.
And so there's this idea, as I say, that some Indians have, that we could produce dairy without violence, and the answer is no. Sorry,
no, you can't.
You can't produce dairy without violence. Dairy, in certain ways, milk is every bit as much violent as
Yes.
as meat.
There you go.
And it's simply wrong to say that we could do this in a way that doesn't involve killing. The answer is,
Right.
of course, it involves killing. What are you going to do with all the males?
Exactly.
We can have them hanging around.
Exactly.
And so they become veal.
Right.
And the
And
mothers.
in India, they're better getting exported.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the mothers and the babies are separated.
Right.
And they suffer. They have a terrible life. But even if they had a great life,
Yeah.
you'd still have to separate mother from baby. You'd still have to kill males.
Right.
So there's no way that this can be done in a way that doesn't involve killing. And I think it's just one of these fantasies that
Yes.
people tell themselves.
Exactly.
It's like they tell themselves that leather's okay because leather is just, people think that leather is okay because it's just a byproduct. And the answer is no. It's actually part of the meat industry. It's part of the economics of the meat industry.
It is.
But you're wearing the skin of an animal. Same thing with wool. Wool involves terrible violence. And people say, well, but they didn't kill the sheep to get the sweater. And the answer is, well, at some point, first of all, the shearing process is itself involves a great deal of violence. But then eventually, those sheep, when they get shorn the last time, they go into the slaughterhouse.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I mean, so I think it's it's part of the fantasy we tell ourselves. I remember when I ate meat when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it's okay because there are laws that require that they slaughter animals humanely and that they treat animals humanely. Now I realize as a lawyer and a law professor that that's just nonsense, and there's no such thing as humane exploitation. But at that time, I told myself that story, and so I think that the Hindus and Jains are no different, and they tell themselves
It's all
stories.
a fantasy. Yeah.
It's a fantasy.
And we're not living in Lord Krishna's time. That was 5,000-10,000 years ago, when the land was, there were 100 maybe million people on the planet. Now we're almost 7.4 billion people. And maybe back then, agriculture was such that we needed it to keep us maybe alive, just barely alive to drink it. But now we're not living in that time anymore.
Whether it was required then or not, it's not required now.
Okay, right.
And it's not required now. I was raised a Catholic, and so people always said, well, Jesus ate. He multiplied the loaves and fishes, and there's a story. There's a Bible story where Jesus has a couple of fish and he's got a huge crowd and he multiplies the fish, and this is some sort of indication that Jesus thinks it's a great idea to eat fish.
Yeah.
And the answer is, look, these are stories. We don't know whether they're true or false.
Exactly.
And you know what? If Jesus ate fish, he shouldn't have done it.
Right. Right.
And you say, well, he was God. He could, and the answer is, well, these figures, even if they have some sort of divine presence or divine status, doesn't mean that everything they do is right. And so I don't, because you get this from Jains. They say, well, but Mahavir, who was Mahavir was not vegan, and the answer is maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. And if he wasn't, he should have been. He should have been. And did Jesus ate animals? We don't know, because Jesus was actually part of at least there's some historical evidence that he was allied with a group called the Essenes, and the Essenes were, from what we could tell, largely vegan. At least there's some indication that they were vegan. So we don't know really what Jesus ate or did. But you know what? I don't really care what Jesus ate.
Exactly.
I don't really care. I mean, he had a great message of loving each other.
That's it.
And that's really what matters. Whether he was a vegan or not is irrelevant.
There you go.
And the same thing with Krishna, and the same
Yeah.
thing with Mahavir, and all
Exactly.
these. Who cares? Whether
Yeah. Yeah.
and the issue is what morally should we do now?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. We already talked about. I wanted to talk about the leather and the wool and the silk.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
get it into a little bit of that because, we might be going to the temple, but we're wearing a
Right.
silk sari or we're wearing wool or leather, and that's not ahimsa.
Right, exactly. And when I've been at Jain events and they've included me in the actual ceremony, and they pass me milk, I won't touch the milk. And I say, you want to use milk to wash the murtis? You're go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
I won't touch it.
Right.
And I've had discussion. I've had a lot of discussions with people. And what's interesting to me is that the reaction. Unlike animal people, unlike animal advocates, when I talk to them about being vegan as a real requirement, they give me a hard time and they say, as long as you're compassionate, that's okay. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
But interestingly, with Jains,
Yeah.
they view veganism as a really good thing, and it's something that we should aspire to.
Yeah.
But they sort of see it as sort of a higher level, and what I keep saying to them is, no, everybody should be doing this. It's not a question of a higher level. It's a question of if you take nonviolence seriously, you can't distinguish between meat and other animal products. And I've had a lot of Jains get upset with me when I say that. When I say that there's as much suffering and death in a glass of milk as there is in a pound of steak.
Yes.
And they say, well, no, but that's not true. And I said, of course it's true.
It is very true.
It's true. And I understand that you don't want to equate meat and dairy, but they are the same. They're
thing.
equivalent.
That's right.
And I don't view vegetarianism as a coherent moral position. I mean, if somebody says to me, I'm a vegetarian, but I'm not a vegan, I say, well, that's to me like saying, I eat the meat from small cows, but I won't eat the meat from mediums, from larger cows or something. And that's irrational.
Right.
Why would you draw the line there?
Right.
And so my view is that vegetarianism is you're participating in animal exploitation. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you think about it, the per 1,000 calories of nutrition, the highest number of deaths is with eggs and with chicken and eggs.
Okay.
If the number of death per 1,000 calories of eggs is much higher than it is for cows or pigs or sheep or animals like that.
Wow.
And so if you stop eating meat and you're eating more eggs, you may actually be responsible for more animal deaths.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, it's none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
And but I always say to my Jain friends, look, what is it that you're sacrificing? I mean, what's the problem here?
Yeah.
And we like ice cream. You can get,
exactly plant-based ice creams, cheese, everything.
You can get these soy-based ice creams or these coconut-based
almond,
ice creams.
Yeah.
You can get things to replace paneer.
Yes.
You can get.
To make raita.
Right, sure. I mean, I make soy yogurt.
Yeah,
you can make, and you can make the paneer like, some of these textures you can texturize the tofu. Mm-hmm. It's easy.
It's easy.
And it's totally easy. I mean, if you want to have a lot of ghee, you don't need the ghee. You
use
can
the plant-based butter.
You can use plant-based margarines or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And you can clarify those. You can use those.
Right.
And so it's not really. It puzzles me.
Yeah, it puzzles me too.
It puzzles me.
And especially with the Jains, I mean, they won't even eat root vegetables.
I know.
And when I talk to them about dairy, they're like, "Oh, we're not. You talk about veganism, but we don't even eat root vegetables." I'm like, "Well, how could you hurt a 5 cents sentient being?"
Yes. I frequently, I carry around. One of the agams, the Jain agams, that talks about the one that talks about animals a great deal.
Yeah.
And the Chandra Sutra.
Yeah.
And when I always, it's obnoxious. I shouldn't do it probably, but I have all the things marked, and I say, look at this. It says you should not impose any suffering on any mobile, multi-sense being.
Yeah.
There is no way you can square that
right.
with dairy.
Yes. Period. Period.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I don't understand that it's odd.
Yeah.
Although I think things are changing.
Yes.
In the Jain community.
Yes.
At least in North America.
Yes, they seem to be catching on a little bit, especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
Than the Hindu culture. I feel like the Jains are wanting to listen.
Yeah.
I'm able to talk at Jain temples more than get into the Hindu temples.
Yeah.
So you're right. Things are changing a little bit.
And I heard recently that Rakesh, who is a very big Jain leader.
Okay.
And he has a very significant following. Years ago, I met when I was speaking at a Jain event in Los Angeles. He had come from India, and he asked to speak with me, and I had a private meeting with him, and he asked me. He said, "Is your objection the way we treat the animals, or that we're using them at all?" And I said, that we're using them at all.
Right.
I said, obviously, less suffering is better than more suffering, but I don't think we should be using them at all.
Yeah.
And we had an interesting discussion. And then he came to the United States 2 years after that, and I met with him again. And recently I was told that he has in fact gone vegan.
Oh, good.
And I think that will be, I don't know whether he has yet... and I don't believe he has yet said to his followers, "You need to go vegan."
Yeah.
I don't know that he's done that.
Yeah.
But my sense from watching the way he relates to them and the way they relate to him, once they get that he's vegan and that he thinks this is important, many of them will switch. Will
Yes.
go. So I do think that and what's important about that is he's an Indian.
Yeah.
You know, the problem. There have been a number of North American Jains
Okay.
who have become vegans.
Yeah.
But there haven't been any major spiritual leaders in India
Yeah.
who have gone vegan.
Yeah.
And that's been the problem.
Right.
Is that the monks and the acharyas and these leaders
Yeah.
are not
Yeah.
vegan.
Yeah.
That's been a problem.
Right.
And I think that
Once
that,
they do.
once they do, when
Yeah.
and once you get one doing it, then
Right.
But so I think I actually I still believe that there's a very good chance that Jains will become largely vegan by the time I leave the planet.
Yes, I'm praying that too, and let it ripple this message to the Hindus as well, because we believe in Ahimsa also.
I do have to tell you the number of times I have I've gotten some pretty negative when I talk about dairy and I talk about Ahimsa.
Yeah.
Some Hindus get really angry. I've had.
That's
actually,
their defense method. They get defensive.
But I mean, I've had some people. I've had a ban from my Facebook page because they say some really horrible things.
Oh shoot!
Really.
Tell us.
No. I mean,
Okay.
they're really. I mean, it's like it. And then there was this fellow who says he's going to debate with me, Sivarama Sharma or Sivarama Swami.
Okay.
Who I think is a Hare Krishna type, I believe.
Yes.
And I challenged him, and he said he was going to debate me, and I have been asking him relentlessly to do this podcast today.
Yes, let's do it.
He's always too busy.
Okay.
But I think it's a problem. Look, it's a problem with all. It's not just a problem with Eastern religions. I mean, I think that as Christians, people have an obligation to go vegan because, first of all, if you actually look at the Bible, in the creation story in Genesis, when God creates the world, God says to Adam and Eve, "The herb and the seed shall be your food." So in the Garden of Eden,
everyone was vegan,
no
right?
one's killing anybody.
Right.
It's only when there is a breach of the covenant between God and humans when humans disobey God,
right,
and they leave the Garden of Eden, that killing begins.
Yeah.
So, and if you look at the later books of the Old Testament, when the covenant is restored, the lion shall lay down with the lamb, none shall be killed in all of my holy kingdom, and things like that. So if you and as I said, there is some historical evidence that Jesus was an Essene, part of a mystical Jewish sect that largely, at least there's evidence that they did not consume animal foods.
Yeah.
And so, and Buddhism, this idea that, well, may all beings be free of suffering. Well, may all beings be free of Buddhists who run around saying may all beings be free of suffering, but who aren't vegan.
Isn't Dalai Lama? He's not vegan.
No, he's not. He's not even a vegetarian. He eats meat. Yeah, he eats meat.
Gosh, I don't understand that.
And I recently posted something about it, and I got people getting upset with me because because I'm not supposed to say anything negative about Dalai Lama.
Well, it is what it is.
It is what it is. The guy's not a vegetarian. The guy, and not that I think that it would be better if he didn't eat meat, but he doesn't. He eats meat. He eats dairy.
How can you be preaching peace?
I don't know. And he says he does it for health reasons, which is nonsense.
Yeah, it is. It is. What are your views on ahimsa milk? Do you know about this?
Yeah.
What are your views on?
That was Sivarama Swami.
Okay.
He was pimping this ahimsa milk.
Yes.
And the bottom line is,
okay,
in order to have milk, cows got to be pregnant.
Number one,
and Number one. Yeah. Number two, you're going to have males and females.
Right.
Males can't give milk.
Right.
So therefore, you got to figure out what to do with the males.
Right.
And this idea that we're producing milk, which involves no suffering, is a con job. It's nonsense.
Yep.
And that's what I called Sivarama Swami on. He was promoting ahimsa milk.
Yes.
And I said, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's blah, blah, blah. And I said, let's talk.
1 second. So I went to also a Hare Rama Hare Krishna temple where what they're doing now is they're buying their own farms.
Yeah.
And their own Brahmin cows.
Yeah.
And they're calling it cow protection.
Yeah.
Where they're still going to protect them for all their lives, but they're still going to take milk from them. And like you said, if we're going to take milk, that means twice a day. So that still means that you're taking the milk that's made for the calf.
Right.
And what are they doing with all the male cows? It's not going to be sustainable to keep all these male cows on the land.
I don't remember what some of Sivarama's followers came onto the page and we discussed this, and I don't remember what they said happened to the males. I think they said they were used for
plowing. But why do we don't need plowing anymore.
Also, that's that's problematic in and of itself.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that and I'm sure if I ever do the podcast debate with Sivarama Swami or whatever his name is, I'm sure that I'll be treated to all sorts of levels of nonsense because I see the stuff that the man writes and it's nonsense, and he talks about how this is God's will and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? Yeah. Everybody who does something wrong says it's God's will.
Yeah.
Whether it's flying a plane into a building or whether it's exploiting animals or whether it's, being misogynistic, it's all God's will.
Right, and they'll always say Lord Krishna this and Lord Krishna that. But, during Lord Krishna's time, there was a lot of war.
Sure.
Lord Krishna himself was quite of a flirt. He had a lot of gopis as his... today's time, we don't accept that our husbands flirt with 100 women.
Right.
So what happened then is not an excuse to what we could be doing now.
Exactly. And look, I mean, I've often said, I don't care what God it is, if you have a God that tells you it's okay to beat up on animals and anybody else, it's time to switch gods.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You need a new God.
Exactly. And if we think about it, the only person she wants at her udders is her baby. This is so simple.
Right.
Even when you're hand milking, it's almost like a sexual assault if you think about it. Because the only person she wants at her udders, just like us women, we only want our baby there. And the only person she wants is her baby calf.
Right.
So it's a type of a sexual assault.
Exactly. Well, it's a commodification of her body and of her relationship with her babies.
Yes.
It's a complete commodification of that. It really, I don't understand how people can say I'm a feminist.
Exactly.
But I'm not a vegan.
Exactly.
I would say, well,
it's a feminine issue.
Because you're commodifying her reproductive system.
Exactly.
You're commodifying her relationship with her baby.
Exactly.
And then to just say, well, but she's not human, that's like saying, well, I'm a feminist, but I don't care about what happens to women from Fiji.
Exactly.
Or something. I'm going to draw an artificial, crazy line.
Right.
But
and if you'd ever spend time, with cows, which I do on sanctuaries, They love. All she wants to do is lick her clean and help her stand
Oh yeah,
up.
they are great.
They're great mothers.
Cows are great mothers, and they're very emotionally attached to their babies.
Yes.
And one of the worst things you can ever see, I don't know if you've ever seen it in person. I have. Is when cows are when the babies are taken away from the mother. Oh
yes,
God,
bellow.
They try. It's so sad because they try. These are huge animals, you know, and but they don't know how to be violent. You know, they could kill us. They're huge,
right.
But they don't know how to be violent. Docile. They're so docile, and so but they tend to sort of stand in a. They'll try to protect their babies or stand in a circle, and they'll follow when the baby's going off. And,
gosh.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. It kills me.
You know, and I don't understand how anybody who claims to be spiritual.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Why anybody who claims to be spiritual could touch milk.
Exactly.
You know, or eggs or cheese, you know, whatever.
Any
of that stuff.
This is why it's so frustrating for me. What do you say to people who say, you know, milk and ghee has been, you know, part of the culture for all these years?
I always say to them, sexism has been part of the culture for thousands and thousands of years, and it's pervasive, and who cares?
Right.
It's wrong.
It's wrong.
You know, I mean,
traditions.
Anything that we can think of that is morally objectionable is part of somebody's culture.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember years ago when I lived in New York City, I used to have a radio show on WBAI, which is a Pacifica station in New York City. And I did it wasn't just about animals, it was about lots of things. And I did a show on female genital mutilation. And I had people telling me that clitorectomies, well, you know, that was a cultural thing. And I said, I don't really care what
that's violence.
I mean, my view is, if a woman wishes to do that when she's an adult, and she
Yeah.
wishes to, that's her decision. I would try to talk her out of it, but that's her decision.
Right.
The idea that you're doing this to 8-year-old girls is, in my judgment, criminal.
Yes.
And when somebody says to me, well, that's offensive to my culture, the answer that I say to that is the answer that I give to feminists who tell me, as a man, I can't speak about feminism when I say that you ought to be a vegan if you're a feminist, is I'm not into identity politics. You have to deal with what I say, the substance of what I say, and not, you know, and the idea that I can't criticize female genital mutilation because I'm not African or from the Middle East where these things are practiced, or that I can't talk about the commodification of the reproductive processes of cows and why that's objectionable because I'm a man and I can't talk about feminism is nonsense.
Right. So true. So true. Last, Dr. Francione, do you have any advice for me? This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get into the temples and talk about this. How can I better approach this about the cruelty of dairy and getting it out of the temples? Because in the temple, in the house of God, where we're not going to wear leather, we're never going to have beef at any temple. Mm-hmm. How can I better my activism in the temples?
I think it's hard because I think in certain ways, at least my experience with Indian culture in this country, is they tend to take more seriously outside people from outside the community. So I can actually sort of talk with them about things as a white guy who's not, you know, part of that culture. Yeah. I can talk with them about things more easily than people who are members of, you know, who are Indian. Right. And I think it's a problem with, I think sexism is a problem in all cultures. Yes. In Indian culture is not.
Oh yeah, it's a big time.
It's not immune from that. And I frequently remark at Jain events that, you know, you have Jain women who are tremendously educated, accomplished people. Yes. And generally, the panels at Jain events are oftentimes, you know, dominated by men. Yeah. And so I think it's a problem of, you know, familiarity breeds contempt. You're Indian. Yeah. And you're a woman. Yeah. So I think you got problem, and I think, you know, you going into it, you got those problems. I think the best thing that you can do is my experience with talking to Indians about veganism is when the light goes on is when they understand that dairy necessarily involves killing.
That's it. Yeah.
Because there's this tendency to think that, well, dairy is something that can
happy
be done,
cows.
you know, but that you don't need to kill. They give milk. Yeah. You know, but they only give milk when they're pregnant, so you have to keep impregnating them, and then eventually, you know, they
we're raping them by we're using artificial insemination.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I was involved in doing some work with a Jain in North Carolina, Praveen Shah, who is
Yes, he writes the books. Yes, yes.
Praveen is a wonderful man.
Yes, he is.
And there's there are all sorts of pictures of the Indian dairy industry of them using the rape rack and things like that. I mean, it's just dreadful.
Yeah.
And so I think the best thing to do with Indians is to sort of focus on the fact that dairy involves killing necessarily.
That's it. Yeah.
And that once she's had 5 or 6 calves, 7 calves, she's dead. They kill her.
Right.
And that and most Indians in this country at least are stunned when you tell them and you show them a newspaper article that says India's leading exporter of beef in the world.
Exactly.
People are shocked. Indians
They're
are
very
shocked.
They're very shocked.
And
how could this be when the cow's sacred?
Exactly. And so I think that's what you've got to do is keep bringing home that this stuff is all involves killing.
Yes.
That you cannot any line you draw is an arbitrary line.
Yes.
And then focus on the fact that, and you know what, it doesn't take. It's so simple.
Yeah.
We're not talking about major sacrifices here.
Yeah.
There have been a number of Jain events where they have served people vegan things, but they haven't told them that the ice cream was vegan, or that the paneer was made from tofu, or that the ghee was not ghee but was clarified margarine or soy margarine or whatever.
Okay.
And they didn't know. They don't know.
Yeah, and it tastes great.
You wouldn't know. I mean,
exactly.
And so I think that you just got to keep hammering home the relationship between the dairy products and killing. And
breaking the bond even with the mother and a child.
Yes,
it's breaking the bond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to there's some great things that you can get from Hinduism and Jainism about violence, about why violence is bad, and there's no way you can square the most humanely produced dairy violates those principles. That's what you're and look, I think that a lot of Indian people are really open to this.
Yeah.
It's very much a part of the culture.
Right.
In the same way that we're used to sort of thinking about the world as having a certain order.
Mm-hmm.
Men control things.
Yeah.
Women, exist to make men happy.
Mm-hmm.
And when the light goes on and you realize that's nonsense,
right,
your world changes.
Yeah.
And I think that the same thing is true that that a lot of Indian people assume that dairy is it's part of the order.
Yeah.
And when you tell them this part of the order is no more,
right, that's
it's threatening.
That's right. That's right. Any last words of advice?
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I actually think that that's one of the few areas where I think significant progress can be made in the Indian community.
Because they're almost there. I mean, it's that one switch.
The thing is, most of my life I spent talking to people who eat meat.
Yeah.
And so I got to move them off of everything.
Right.
You're functioning within cultures.
Yeah.
Hindu, Jain.
Yeah.
Where they've already given up the meat for reasons of nonviolence.
Exactly.
And so they see the moral connection. So it's like, it's not like talking to an American who sort of thinks that, well, you're a communist if you don't eat meat or something like that.
Yeah.
And that where all of these things are regarded as being sort of good things to consume. The Indians are already at the point where they're saying, well, I can't eat meat because
ahimsa.
Ahimsa and it's violence and it's wrong.
Right.
Well, you only have to move them a little bit. I mean, if you think about where they are on the spectrum,
mm-hmm.
they're there.
Right.
And but it's hard. I mean, it's hard because there's this culture and tradition are powerful.
So powerful.
And
but just because it's tradition, it's not morally acceptable.
Everything that's bad is part of somebody's tradition. Racism is traditional.
Right.
Sexism and misogyny is part of every single culture and has been for thousands of years. So what? It's wrong.
Exactly.
And so, and I think, we all think of ourselves as having these big brains and being able to say, our superiority is based on our ability to think rationally. Well, most of us are quite irrational.
Yeah.
And if we thought rationally, we would see the irrationality of how we regard non-human animals. But I think that the Indian community, again, in the United States, I can't speak for the Indian community, but the Indian community in the United States, I think, is, sort of poised to go in that direction. They need to be persuaded, they need to be educated, but they're open, unlike many other people. They're open, and they're, just as there's a tradition of dairy, there's a tradition of ahimsa, rejecting meat. What you need to do is to get people to see that the tradition of ahimsa that rejects meat necessarily rejects the dairy.
Right.
And they don't, Indians, as a general matter, don't eat eggs, but they'll eat eggs that are contained in things.
In cake?
In cakes.
Yeah, cake and breads.
Yeah,
They don't think of it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Will you be speaking at any more Jainia conferences?
I haven't, I don't have any planned right now,
Okay.
but, I don't have any planned right now. I think, one of my objections to, my concerns about the Jain community is that, although they want to engage the issue, they're uncomfortable about engaging the issue. And,
I know, it's frustrating.
And, I understand that I make people uncomfortable, but that's what
That's okay.
That's what I need to do.
Exactly. Dr. Francione, how can we get in touch with you? Can you share your website?
Oh yeah, I have my, it's abolitionistapproach.com is one of them. Howdoigovegan.com is one I really love. That's a website that I put together with a bunch of other people, volunteers, who have done a fabulous job.
Wow.
Howdoigovegan.com.
Okay. Howdoivegango.com.
Howdoigovegan.com, abolitionistapproach.com, and they can come to my Facebook page, Gary Francione, the Abolitionist Approach to Animal Rights, where I will, as long as people are civil, I will engage in discussion with them. They don't call me two terrible bad names. I will engage in discussion with them.
Wonderful.
And they can. The problem is, I have a job, and I don't do fundraising. I don't take money to do this. And so I never have, and so it's just me and Anna,
right.
And so and the people who volunteer to help and things. So I get so many emails I can't respond to them all. I try.
Yeah.
Do
you still speak every time on Bob Linden's?
I do, I haven't done How Do I Go Go Vegan Radio for a couple of weeks, but I've done.
Okay.
I do them. Bob is a good friend.
Yeah,
I've known him for
I
many
listen
years.
to you on that all the time. It's great.
Bob is a wonderful guy.
He is.
And,
he is.
And I was in Houston a few years ago speaking at some group, speaking with some group. I was there for a Jain event, but I also did another event. And my perception is that there's a good vegan community developing in Houston.
It is.
And I recently had dinner with the family of a woman who was my first research assistant when I went into teaching in 1984.
Wow.
And her son, talk about midlife crisis, I'm having one right now. Her son is a student at Rice.
Okay.
And he was telling me all about, I had dinner with them, Anna and I had dinner with them 2 weeks ago, and he was telling me all about what's going on in Houston, and he said he had, I think he said he heard you spoke.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
You spoke at Rice, right?
Yes, I spoke at Rice.
Yeah, he was there.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So it's like, people are listening,
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's really important is, whether it's in an Indian context or not,
yeah,
you got to be clear, you got to be strong, but you should never be judgmental.
Okay.
And so, and I think that sometimes vegans can sort of cross that line in terms of getting, becoming, more, like they're morally superior people.
Yeah, and we're not, because we weren't always vegan.
Well, my view is I consider myself lucky that I was able to sort of see this, and I know I do think it's the right thing to do, and I do think it's wrong to exploit animals.
Yes.
And but my view is that I'm not a priest, and I'm not interested in sort of determining the state of your soul. That's not my business.
Yeah.
And what I would like to do is talk with you about actions that you do,
right,
that are, and so what I will have a conversation with somebody, who says, I love my dog, and then I can say, well, but if you love your dog, what's the difference between the dog you love and the chicken that you eat?
Exactly.
And so, but I think it's really important not to be perceived,
Judge,
not
yeah.
to be perceived as judging or condemning other people,
Right.
but rather trying to educate them.
Educate them.
And not. The expression I use is educate people in creative and nonviolent ways.
Okay.
You know.
And you always like to say, I hope I provoked
Yes.
some thoughts in you.
Yeah. That's what I want to do. Is I want to
Yeah.
provoke. I want to provoke you.
Yeah.
I want to get you thinking.
Yeah.
I want to stimulate you into
Right.
sort of thinking about these issues.
Yeah.
And what I also want to do is get you to see that you already believe. My view is if somebody says to me, I believe that it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals,
That's it.
I'm 99%
Yeah,
there. All I need to do
that's
is sort
it.
of
Yeah.
lead them a little bit.
Yeah.
But so that's what I think. I mean, I think that we need to be creative. The book that I gave you today, Advocate for Animals,
Yeah.
is a book in which Anna and I try to. You need to educate yourself so you can educate other people.
Others,
You
yeah.
know, this idea, this instant activism, where activism becomes holding a computer, or standing wearing a mask, or going to a slaughterhouse and sort of what they call witnessing.
Witness.
That
Visual,
that I think is a really horrible idea, because animals on the way to the slaughterhouse are completely freaked out. When you stop them, when you stop the truck and you're sticking your hands in, they're not perceiving that this is a use, that this is that's bad. You're increasing their
Yeah.
distress.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is we're living in a culture where people don't want to read anything more than a tweet, and they don't want to be bothered to read. They don't want to be bothered to educate
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
The problem is we're trying to undo thousands of years of thinking, of
Right.
wrong thinking.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do this is by educating yourself so that you can educate other people.
Educate others. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you very much for
Francione,
having me.
being.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for all the work you're doing. Keep doing it, because I think there's a shot with the Indian people.
I
in
gotta
this
keep
country.
going. I gotta
You gotta
fight.
keep going.
Yeah, I mean, just like my grandfather was fighting for justice. I'm continuing that, and we're fighting for speciesism. And we'd love everybody to be in peace and go vegan.
I think Gandhi regarded it as a failing of his that he wasn't vegan.
He tried.
He
He
tried.
tried, and then he went to goat's milk for a
Goat's
little
milk,
bit because
right.
he was getting sick.
Right.
But had he been here today, Gandhi would have been vegan.
Yeah.
And same with Lord Krishna. I mean, no God that is all-knowing, all compassion, and all love would be a part of any suffering. So
Exactly.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
We love you. Peace out.
Bye.